And we're back for part 2. Here's the second reading. And this is taken from Dr. Wayne Dyer's book, There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, which I think is one of Dr. Wayne Dyer's best books. When you enter the space of those who live, breathe, and practice thinking light thoughts, you can feel the lighter energy in the room. As Patanjali suggested, all living creatures cease to feel enmity in the presence of those who are steadfast in their abstention from having harmful, impure thoughts. This is bringing light to the presence of darkness, and the more you decide to practice it, the more you will become an emissary of light. Impure thinking and behavior cannot stand up to the power of your pure light, any more than darkness can stand up to the presence of light. Excellent words from Dr. Dyer. And our second musical selection, you might know this one. Let me grab my guitar. And the troubled times that we've been through in history, American history, world history, but this one is kind of from the civil rights movement. It was sung quite a bit then. It's called We Shall Overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, Sending peace throughout the world. Strength to Ukraine. In between making this video and the last one, you wouldn't know this, but I had to take out a half an hour to deal with my phone ran out of storage, and I had to spend a lot of time on the phone figuring out how to get more storage. So and then singing "We Shall Overcome," it just made me reflect on the practice of staying calm in the midst of turmoil. And it wasn't really turmoil, but kind of a first world problem. I wanted to speak to what Dr. Dyer is saying here. Anyway, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad I worked it out, and finally I'm getting you Church of Spirituality today, even though it's going to be kind of late before it uploads, but better late than never. Dr. Dyer says, when you enter the space of those who live, breathe, and practice thinking light thoughts, you can feel the lighter energy in the room. Through the past several days since Vladimir Putin decided to attack the innocent civilians of Ukraine and start a war, during that time I felt a strong urging to pass the word, to meditate, and to get groups of people together to meditate. And in that spirit, that's what I pulled together. And I wanted to explain the reason for that. The other thing that Dr. Dyer says in the book, There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, is he does talk about, when we get still, we actually raise our vibration. And that is a way to raise our vibration. And since, as we always talk about at Church of Spirituality, raising one's vibration raises the energy of the collective. So even though we live in a world where the norm in the Western world especially is to go, and to zip around and to be really busy and to be really stressed and full of anxiety and full of fear. And there are many, many, many reasons to be full of anxiety and fear, because there's a lot of things that are very confusing and very chaotic and very not peaceful in the world. There's just so much of that. And what we don't know, it's like the greatest secret ever. And once the secret's out, hopefully people will start to adhere to this on a massive level. I just call it a secret, is that when we are still, our vibrational frequency gets higher. And as Dr. Wayne Dyer was saying, when our frequency is higher, and I say this often, when you walk into a room, if you walk into a room with somebody who's maybe there was just a fight there, or somebody in the room is in a very terrible mood, you don't even have to be psychic or intuitive or an empath. You can sense it. And if you practice that sort of thing in your life, then you definitely, it's definitely a thing that you know for sure that the energy is off somehow. When you're in the presence of somebody who thinks light thoughts, who's very positive, and maybe who's a meditator, it's not better or worse. We're just talking about energy. That affects other people. And when somebody is loving, and when somebody's striving to be loving, then in order to strive to be loving, because there are so many opportunities all the time for us not to feel loving, we really have to do the work. As I'm telling you this, I'm looking at this book in front of me, my little bookshelf, Handbook to Higher Consciousness. It's a very old book that I ordered from Thrift Books by Ken Keyes, and I've mentioned it before. In this book, there's a suggestion that when one feels conflicted with another person, to repeat the mantra, always us living love. So we always have the choice to go to love, and it is a practice, because we get so triggered in life, and during these very tumultuous times when the light frequency is actually increasing, we're seeing a lot of the darkness, coming up against the light, and then we have an opportunity for real change and transformation. There is a need for us to individually practice that peacefulness and that love, and that becomes what goes on in the collective. So the greatest challenge for me, for you, for most people, is to be able to meet something that we're resistant to, that's dark and negative and maybe anger provoking and loaded with injustice. When we're up against that, if we as individuals can find a way or ways, there's many different ways, many are tried and true, to come to a place of, I am not going to allow that to affect my vibrational energy. In fact, I'm going to go for the more higher vibration. I've mentioned before that the Dalai Lama has said that he prays every day, he meditates every day on compassion for the Chinese, who, very much like what Vladimir Putin did to Ukraine, the Chinese did that to Tibet. So obviously, because he's a human, he's an enlightened human, but he's human and he has human emotions, as did Jesus, as have all the enlightened masters that took human form. They're not just without human emotions. So he meditates on compassion daily. And I mentioned the story that Dr. Dyer told about the Dalai Lama when he was fearful, when a reporter asked him if he was fearful when the Chinese were invading Tibet and he had to flee. The Dalai Lama said, yes, he was very fearful, but he was fearful because he was afraid he'd lose his compassion. And I repeated that story because it's a very enlightening story. It's a very enlightening account of what can happen and what no matter what the circumstances, to have what I've heard referred to as radical forgiveness is like having compassion for the attacker. I mean, and we've heard amazing stories about this. Amazing stories about this. You can look them up. Pope John Paul was shot and not killed, fortunately, and forgave his almost assassin. There's a book about Rwanda, and Immaculée, I will mutilate her last name, but her first name is Immaculée, tells the story about the genocide and the slaughter in Rwanda, where people that used to be her neighbors and her friends and her classmates were going around slaughtering her class of people because they got in a mob mentality and they just started murdering everybody. And she later forgave her almost murder. It's a stretch. If they can forgive, and there are so many other instances of this, if they can forgive, we can forgive. And in light of what's happening, if we can just practice being quiet, if we can just practice not staying with the anger, staying with the rage, we get so angry at the injustices. And it's such a kind of a paradox. How can we not be in a place of negativity and anger and want for revenge and just perturbed and incensed and so rageful at what we see happening in the world. God, it's a stretch. Dear God, help us with this one, because this is not easy. And like I always say when I play the little forgiveness chant every week, it doesn't mean we're aligning or condoning with the terrible behavior and the injustices and the violence and the bullying and the bashing and the slander. It doesn't mean we're saying, oh, that's totally fine, let it be so. When we forgive, what we're doing is we're freeing ourselves up for the higher vibrational frequency energy to be let in. This is work, everybody. This is work. And the reason that in that chant, I wrote into that chant, we forgive everyone, and with God's help, forgive everyone, especially ourselves, is because it gets difficult, it's hard to forgive, and then we get mad at ourselves for not being able to forgive, and then that just perpetuates a cycle. So it's really better for us to go, we're doing the best that we can, and we're working towards it, and we're holding the space for forgiveness. So this, the peaceful individual contributes to the peaceful world, to the world being more peaceful. And I want to be the optimist here that says the outcome can be a more peaceful world because of this atrocity that's occurring right now as we speak on February 27th, 2022. And right now it's 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And in Ukraine, it's the middle of the night. As these atrocities are happening, these murders are happening to the poor people of Ukraine, we have an opportunity to help them through the collective energy of meditation. This event, this horrible event that we're praying intently to end, this war to end, has actually, this is not the way we want to see it happen, but incidentally has caused the world to come together, to unite, to fight the evil. So in that instance, we have the potential for the tipping point to happen where we actually become a more loving and peaceful world because we united in the interest of saving humanity as a world. It starts one individual at a time. So this is the work. This is the bringing a loving peace to create a peaceful world. And I know that it is a stretch, but we must do the work. And I feel a little bit like a school teacher, but that's okay. I am hoping that you all have heard this before. As I speak now, the Russians haven't taken Ukraine. And everyone is a little bit taken aback, and Vladimir Putin is stunned because we know he's stunned because he thought it would be easy for his evil to conquer the good, and he's finding out differently. And we don't know what will transpire, and we can pray and we can meditate and we can be that peaceful energy that will ripple out and be the peace that changes things in this situation. The light is growing brighter. Every time we feel agitated, every time we feel upset with people, if we do the work, and I mean the meditation and the prayer and the taking good care of ourselves, not beating ourselves up, doing work that we love doing, being with people that are peaceful people and happy people, making the effort, doing the best that we can, we are contributing to world peace. We're literally contributing to world peace. We can always find some laughter. We can always find children to laugh with. We can always find beauty in nature. We can always find a positive person. We can always pray to God when we can't find it anywhere. Can you show me? Give me, just kind of throw me a bone, like, can you throw me something good? And it works. And God does. And one other thing that I just remember that Wayne Dyer said in his talks was, when we want to feel good, we can say, I want to feel good, I want to feel God. And that can be a mantra for those who are struggling. We're all either struggling right now, or we have been struggling, or we know people that are struggling. It's part of the human condition. And part of the timeline of human history has been good against evil, good against evil. And let me tell you right here and now that the truth is love always wins. Love always wins. There's no force that's more powerful. And even when we don't see it, that's when the faith comes in. God is still with us. We are one with God. We are one with Spirit. We co-create with God, as the chant says. Love always wins. So let us be the love. Let us be the light. Let us practice. And when we feel like we're not getting there and we're really being challenged, let's just do the best that we can, because we need to work on the collective energy so that we don't go into the unthinkable. Are you with me? If we were live right now, I'd see if I can get a witness, but we'll do that next time. Always wins. Love always wins. So for the next part of our program, I want to say that anything that that is eventually donated to Church of Spirituality, when I set that up, I have enough tech things to think about. We will be donating 100% of what comes to Church of Spirituality to a worthy organization. And for this week, I just want to say, can you please donate to the International Rescue Committee? You can look it up online, and they're helping the people, the refugees from Ukraine, to have food and shelter and water and what they need. We can't even imagine. We can't even imagine, unless you were ever in a war-torn area. We just have to admit we can't imagine, and we really need to share. In the words of Reverend Martin Luther King, life's persistent and most urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So here's our prayer of thanksgiving. Dear God, thank you for making us more aware of what we have that we can give to others to make a difference in this troubled world. Please help us to look deeply into our hearts to see that we can give more of what we have. Help us to see that our supply is infinite, and grant us the inspiration and courage to be a more generous people. Thank you for the bounty which we receive. Amen. I'm going to play, I think, if I can find it, a hymn called Pass It On, which I usually run out of time, but it looks like I do have a little time. So I'm going to play Pass It On, and because it's kind of the theme of what we are talking about here. And I'm just going to play the melody, because I don't have the book handy that has the key change in it. Okay. Next. I would have sang that, but I don't have the book where I changed the key in front of me. I certainly need an assistant. Anyway, let's end with the quote from Ernest Holmes. It was nice to have a little piano music anyway. We read this every week from Ernest Holmes, and it's a beautiful writing from the Science of Mind. I just want to say thank you so much for being part of Church of Spirituality, even though it's just a recorded service for today. And look for guided meditations, silent meditations that I will be doing again. We'll be gathering together once I work out some things. And in the meantime, please meditate with the videos that are up on my channel. And please subscribe if you can. From the Science of Mind, take a deep breath. Through the long night watches, God's hand clasps ours. At the break of dawn, God's hand clasps ours. In the daytime of work and endeavor, from eternity to eternity, God's hand clasps ours. When time shall have passed, when eternity shall be strewn about like falling petals, and space and worlds shall be swallowed up in everlasting blessedness, God's hand shall clasp ours, and so it is. Go in peace, be peace, and pray for peace. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you next week for a Church of Spirituality. In the meantime, I will be posting videos about what's going on. Namaste. Big blessings. Thank you.